Okay, let's dive right in. On February 1st, 2026, India's finance minister presented the union budget. But this isn't just about spreadsheets and numbers for the next year. Nope. This is a really big piece of a much larger puzzle, a detailed roadmap for India's journey all the way to 2047.
In this one sentence from the finance minister's speech, it really says it all. It's about a dual mission. On one hand, you have massive economic goals. That's the ambition. But on the other, you have to make sure that the benefits of all that growth actually reach everyone, and that's the inclusion. And this whole grand vision has a name, Viksit Bharat.
So what exactly is Viksit Bharat? Well, it literally translates to Developed India. And this is the government's huge long-term vision. The target is set for 2047, which is a massive deal because it'll mark 100 years of India's independence. So every policy, every single rupee spent in this budget is meant to be one more step towards that historic milestone. So here's the game plan for how we're going to break this all down. We're going to start with the three core principles driving this budget. Then we'll see how they plan to fire up the economy and invest in people. After that, we get to the part everyone's waiting for. Taxes. And finally, we'll zoom out and look at that long road to 2047. The entire budget is really built on this central framework, something the government is calling a sankalp, which is like a solemn vow or a deep commitment. And this vow is built around three core duties, or missions, that guide every single proposal. And to really get the spirit of this, you gotta understand the word Kartavya. It's not just a task or a job, it's way deeper. It means a solemn duty, a mission you're committed to. And the budget makes it super clear that these three Kartavya are its guiding light.
And here they are, the big three duties. First, you gotta grow the economy and keep that momentum going. Second, you take that growth and you use it to build up the skills and potential of your people. And third, you make sure that everyone, every family, every part of the country can actually access the opportunities you're creating. See how they connect? It's a chain, from economic power to human empowerment to prosperity for all.
Okay, so let's dig into that first and most fundamental duty, firing up the economic engine. This is all about growth, it's about manufacturing, and it's about building the foundation for everything else that's going to follow. The finance minister used this really cool metaphor, the Reform Express. The idea is pretty simple. Economic reforms are moving at full steam ahead. We're talking over 350 of them just since last year, all designed to make the economy more productive and competitive on the world stage.
And here's the fuel for that express train. Check out this number, a staggering 12.2 lakh crore rupees. That's the budget for public capital expenditure. I mean, to put that in perspective, that's more than the entire economy of some countries. It's a massive investment in infrastructure, the roads, the ports, the digital networks that are the absolute backbone of a modern economy.
But look, this isn't about just throwing money around. It's super strategic. The focus is on boosting manufacturing in what they're calling frontier sectors. So think high-tech stuff like semiconductors and biopharma, the industries of the future, where India is making a serious play to become a global leader. And this is where you can really see that strategy in action. These aren't random picks. Pouring money into semiconductors and electronics, that's a direct move to build more resilient supply chains so you're not so dependent on other countries. Pushing biopharma and rare earth minerals, that's about grabbing a leading role in the industries of tomorrow. It's a very targeted plan to build up critical capabilities right at home. An economy is nothing without its people, right? So let's move on to that second duty, investing in human potential. This part of the budget is all about developing skills, creating real career paths, and empowering people to be a part of this huge growth story. So a key move here is this new high-powered committee. Its job is pretty straightforward, to bridge that gap that can sometimes exist between education and the job market. It's all about making sure what people learn in school or college directly translates into a good job or even their own business, especially in India's top-notch services sector. And this shows you exactly how that idea turns into real jobs. We're talking about creating thousands of new skilled positions, from healthcare professionals and caregivers to tour guides at historical sites. And check this out, there's a huge focus on what they call the orange economy. That's animation, visual effects, gaming, and comics, by putting creator labs right inside 15,000 schools. How cool is that? All right, let's switch gears. It's time for the section that everyone leans in for during a budget announcement. Taxes. This is where those big economic policies start to hit our own personal finances. So, let's get right to the big question. What does this budget actually mean for you and your wallet?
Well, the biggest headline on the income tax front is one word: simplification. Or at least that's the goal. A brand new, simplified Income Tax Act is coming. The whole idea is to make filing your taxes less of a nightmare, with redesigned forms that are just easier for regular people to understand and fill out. And one of the most direct changes you might feel has to do with something called TCS, or Tax Collected at Source. Just look at the drop for overseas tour packages. It's going from as high as 20% all the way down to a flat 2%. Same story if you're sending money abroad for education or medical bills, that rate is getting cut from 5% down to 2%. Basically, it means less of your money gets tied up with the tax department from the get-go.
Now, with all this ambitious spending and investing, you might be wondering, how is the government paying for all this without breaking the bank? Good question. Let's zoom out and look at the country's overall financial health, which is what makes this whole long-term vision possible.
This number right here is a super important health indicator. It's the estimated fiscal deficit at 4.3% of GDP. The easiest way to think about it is like your own household budget. It's the gap between what the government earns and what it spends in a year. A lower number is a good sign. It signals financial discipline and shows they're trying to keep the country's finances on a steady, sustainable path.
And that discipline is part of a bigger trend they call fiscal consolidation, which is just a fancy way of saying they're getting their financial house in order. It's kind of like paying down your mortgage. And this declining debt-to-GDP ratio is another really strong sign of that, showing the country's total debt is actually shrinking compared to the size of its economy.
The speech really tried to sum up the government's entire philosophy with this one powerful line. It frames their whole strategy as being about taking decisive action and making real reforms, focusing on what's good for people in the long run rather than just short-term populist moves. So the budget lays out this ambitious, detailed roadmap. But, a plan is one thing, and actually making it happen is something else entirely. And that leaves us with a final, really critical question. As India pushes forward on this path, what's the single biggest hurdle it needs to overcome to turn these incredible aspirations into a developed reality by 2047?